So if you guys have been producing samples for a while, you have probably heard about Cubeatz. They are some of the most influential producers out there, and I know a lot of people that are strictly making samples and sending them out to different producers just because of Cubeatz. But if you somehow haven't heard about them, they are actually two twin brothers from Germany producing music together. And by the way, I know we have a couple producers from Germany watching the channel, so if you guys are from Germany, shout out to you. But anyways, they're actually super well known for their detuned and vintage type of sound. And with this sound, they have actually worked with some of the biggest artists in the industry. So they have worked with people like Drake, Travis Scott, Kendrick Lamar, Lil Wayne, and I could probably go on and on about the different artists they have worked with, but that right there is just to name a few. Now in this video, I'm literally going to show you guys the secret to the Cubeatz sound and pretty much show you guys how you can recreate their samples and sound from scratch in FL Studio. So let's not waste no time, let's just get straight to it. Alright, so now we are here in FL Studio, as you guys can see. To start off with, I just want to preference something super important when it comes to the sound selection of the Cubeatz sound. So their patterns are actually super simple. All the sound really comes down to is actually the sound selection and the effects we put on the different instruments. Now as for the sound, you would usually hear them use a lot of guitars, bells, strings, pianos, and those type of stringed instruments. In this case, we're just going to be using this Ilya FMF nylon guitar in Contact. Hands down, this is one of the best guitars you can use. So this right here is the guitar we're going to be using for this tutorial. We're just going to be using this classic preset over here. Now one more step when it comes to the sound selection, you really want to play a little bit around with the different sounds that go together. So usually when Cubeatz are using guitars, they usually have some sort of counter melody that either includes a flute, a string, or maybe even sometimes some vocals. But if you listen to more of the samples where they're using pianos or bells, you would usually hear them have some sort of synths or some pads as a counter melody. But like I said, for this tutorial, we are strictly going to focus on the guitar sound because this is probably the most popular one. So I've just turned the BPM up to 144 over here, and the scale we're going to be working in is actually going to be E minor. Now, like I mentioned earlier, Cubeatz are actually very well known for their simplistic sound. So their patterns are actually very easy to make. I see a lot of producers that are actually overcomplicating their patterns when they're trying to make this type of sound. So right here, I'm actually going to show you guys how simple the pattern should actually be. So literally, we're just going to start off with the E minor chord. Now the thing we're going to do with this pattern is actually just highlight this middle note over here, and we actually just want to invert the middle note by pitching it up one octave, and then we can literally just strum out each note to the first line just like this. Now again, just like I said, we want to keep the pattern super simple. So literally all we're going to do now is just strum out the notes super easily just to the first line over here. And since we want the pattern to be super simple, we are just going to cut up the notes over here for each line and pretty much just keep the repeating pattern over again. So now that we have this simple pattern for the first bar, everything we want to do is just copy this over, but we're just going to pitch it down by 5 semitones. Then we're just going to copy the pattern over, extend some of the notes just so it sounds a little bit smoother together, and that is literally everything you need to do for the guitar pattern. You can of course just randomize the velocity and play a little bit around with some of the timing of the notes, but at the end of the day, that's just personal preference, just to make the guitar sound a bit more realistic. But as you can see, the pattern is super simple, but now I'm actually going to show you guys what you need to do to the effects to pretty much get that vintage sound we are looking for. Now to start off with, I've just opened up this Roam over here, and I'm just using this Polite Plate preset over here, but you can play a little bit around with the color you put on the reverb over here. I really like this grounded color because it gives it that vintage feel, but you can obviously go for this airy one, which is a bit more of a reverb type of sound, and you also have this cosmic one, which is a bit more creative. Obviously make sure to play around with the mix knob, the reverb, the low cut, as well as the decay at the end. Then you also really want to add some sort of vinyl effect. I really like using RC20. For this one, we really want to focus a little bit on this wobble over here. So if you just play the guitar, I'm going to turn down the noise a little bit, turn the follow up, and to really get the detune, we're just going to turn the wobble up over here and turn the stereo as well. You can really hear the detune in this one now. Lastly, we're just going to turn the space up a little bit, so it's going to give it some more reverb, but I'm going to turn down the focus as well as the decay just a little bit. Next, we just want to add a little bit of an EQ. So we're just going to cut off all the low end over here, cut out some of the mids as well, and boost a little bit of the highs just to get some more presence on the guitar. Then you also want to add some sort of effect modulator. This is really going to help to get a little bit of a different sound from the guitar. So I really like using this mid-res slapper preset. It's kind of a little bit of a delay, so it's going to give the guitar a different type of sound, but I've just turned the effect knob over here to about 70%. Lastly, you just want to make sure to add some saturation to the guitar. So my favorite saturation is this J37. I love using this 815 preset. Just make sure the noise level over here is off. Since we already have a little bit of noise from the RC20, we don't want to overdo it with the saturation plugin. So just take a listen to how much of a difference it actually makes. This right here is the guitar without any effects. And this right here is if we put the effects on. You can really hear the detune and the vintage sound of the guitar right now. So the effects right there make a huge difference to how the guitar sounds. So you can obviously experiment with different type of effects, but these right here are pretty much some of the go-to effects if you want to get this detune type of sound. The next sound we're going to be adding is this Bandsbury flute in contact. I just want to give a huge shout out to Kavi for putting me on this flute. Literally ever since I've seen his video on this flute right here, it's pretty much been my go-to flutes that I use in almost every flute sample that I make. It actually has a very realistic sound to it, and it's going to fit perfectly for the Cubeatz sound we're going for. As for the flute pattern, you pretty much just want to focus on using some of the same notes we have used from the guitar, but you also just want to add some small transition notes here and there just to give the flute melody a little bit more of a catchy sound to it. So I'm personally just going to play a little bit around with the keyboard and try to record a catchy flute pattern which we can edit a little bit later on. Alright, so I quickly just recorded a little bit of a catchy pattern, but I still feel like we can make some small adjustments here and there just to change up the sound a little bit. Alright, so one of the main things you want to focus on when it comes to the flute, especially if you're using the same flute that we're using right here, is that you want to make sure the notes overlap like this. This is because the flute is going to get a little bit more of a realistic sound. If you have it chopped up on the exact format right here, it's not going to sound as realistic and the flute is going to sound a bit choppy. As for the effects, the flute sounds pretty nice as it is, so we don't really want to go overboard with the effects. All I'm going to do is just add this Valhalla vintage verb just to give it some more ambience. And then we can also just add a small EQ just to kind of shape out the sound a little bit. So I just switched the pattern a little bit over there. That right there is literally how simple it is to get the Cubeatz type of sound. The last thing we want to add now is just some small textures in the background. So I'm just going to go into my Imperial one-shot kit and I'm just going to add some small textures over here. The first texture I'm going to add is just this reverse one. I really like to use this texture in these type of samples just because it's kind of giving it one more element to the sample. It's a little bit subtle because it's in the background, but just take a listen to how it sounds. Now I'm also going to add a second texture. It's going to be this monster one right here. So if you just drag this in, you can hear it kind of gives it a little bit of that dark vibe on the sample as well. Now the last thing we're going to do for the sample is just to try to pitch it down a little bit and see how it sounds. Yes, I really like how it sounds when it's pitched down by 3. That right there, guys, is pretty much the sample. Now you can see how simple the pattern really is and how easy it is to make. Like I said, it's literally all about the sound selection and the effects we put on. Now quickly, just to end off the video, I'm just going to add some drums over this sample. All the drum sounds I'm using are coming from my Euphoria bundle kit. So if you guys like the sounds you hear, you can obviously check it out. It's on my website, it's BBMarko.com. But besides that, let's get on to the drums. So we're just putting on a simple clap pattern to start off with. For the hi-hats, I'm just gonna pick one of the midis from my kit, drag it in and see how it sounds. Yeah, I kind of like the simple pattern over here. Nothing too complex, just like super simple and a little bit bouncy. Just a quick little rim as well. Just some more bounce right there. A little bit of a quick perk. Cool little snare pattern as well. Yeah, that's kind of cool right there. I just need to layer that 808 with the kick just so it punches a bit better. Yeah, that's hard. So that's perfect as well. Oof. Yeah, I really like this. With the flute as well. Yeah, this is kind of hard, I'm not gonna lie. I think that's pretty much the beat right there, to be honest. Super simple beat as well. Yeah, this is hard. It's seriously just that simple, guys.